it on, so I have a lot of work going in the background. That's why I don't have my camera on for today. But needless to say, our lesson is still going to be quite interesting. But really quickly, before I actually get into the lesson for today, I wanted to go over the guidelines of our next paper because it's coming up and I want to give you all enough time to be able to work on that paper. So let's quickly go over the guidelines for our romance in the media paper so that you can ask me any questions and I can give you any idea of how you can work on this paper and all of that good stuff. So let me share my screen with you all right now. Okay, so this is our Canvas page, and this is what, where we can find our paper. So scroll down to the end to this week, which is called the Romantic Relationship in the Media paper. And for this paper, we are actually going to be taking either a fictional character or like a reality character, like from a reality show, and we're going to be analyzing their relationship. So let's quickly take a look at the guidelines. So like I said, for this paper, you will be selecting a romantic couple, so they have to have some type of romantic relationship. It could be heterosexual, it could be part of the LGBTQ plus community. It could be any of that, right? But it has to be a romantic relationship. A friendship would not suffice for that unless it's like kind of like a friends with benefits type of arrangement, that is considered a romantic relationship as well. And you're going to pick this couple that is either part of a television show, book, or movie. And again, like I said, it could be fictional or it could be real life. So you could be choosing like a couple from, I don't know, like The Bachelor, The Housewives, or of whatnot. Or you can actually choose like a fictional character from a movie, like I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey, and all of that. So hopefully that makes sense. So once you have selected the relationship or the couple that you're willing to examine, yes, Patricia.
Will series for Netflix count? There's one that I really love.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So like I said, as long as you like you just have to like include some type of romantic relationship, and like I said, it could be fictional, it could be for a series like Patricia was saying, or it could be just a movie. So that's what you are going to be working on for this paper. Once you have selected that couple, what you're going to do is you're actually going to tell us about the relationship in detail. So you're going to tell us, how their relationship developed, what was it like? Do you think it's a healthy relationship? Do they get along well? So kind of like tell us a little bit more about the couple and how they interact with each other and how their relationship takes place. So that's going to be question number one. Question number two, according to what you have seen on the show, did they go through all the stages of the relationship model? Now, next week, we're actually going to be talking about the relationship model because our paper is not due for like a couple of weeks. So next week, we're actually going to be talking about the relationship model. The relationship model is located on chapter 9. And there's like several different stages that people go through to develop a healthy relationship. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at whether the relationship went through all the stages of the relationship model. So based on what you have observed, or based on what you have seen in the show, movie, series, etc., like do they go through that all those relationship stages? No, Kevin, for this one, you do not have to do a presentation. It's just a paper. That's an excellent question. So like I said, you're going to be going through all the relationship stages, telling me which ones they went through, which ones they did not. So let us know exactly which ones they went through, provide us evidence for that, and which ones did they skip, provide us evidence for that. And you're going to be telling us how did it affect the relationship. So if they went through all the stages, how has this affected the relationship? Did it help it? Does it look like a healthy relationship? If they skip some of the stages, which ones did they skip, and how has it affected the relationship? For question number 3, you are going to be talking about there again in chapter 9, we talk about rules for relationships. So like the relationships rules theory, and you are going to be looking at whether they adhere to those romantic relationship rules. So next week we are actually going to be talking about those romantic relationship rules. So but it is on chapter 9. But we're going to say, did they stick to those rules? Did they violate those rules? Why or why not? And lastly, based on what you know now about interpersonal relationships from the course, do you think, what do you think could have made this relationship better? And you can use any of the concepts from the book that we have discussed in the, from the beginning of the semester all the way up to now. Looking at it, knowing what you know now, how do you think this relationship, could have gotten better or could work better based on what you know now? That's basically all that we're going to be answering, those 4 questions in your paper. So before I move on to, and before I kind of go over the guidelines, do we have any questions in regards to this? No? Okay, cool. So next thing, the guidelines are your paper must be a minimum of 2 pages, a maximum of 4. So it's between 2 to 4 pages. And when I mean 2 to 4 pages, I mean all the way to the bottom. So if you're writing 2 pages, double spaced all the way to the bottom, I would say that, because if it's more of like an analysis paper, your paper should be around like 3 pages long, usually. So that's what your paper is, that's the length that it is required. Obviously, it has to be double spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font, all of that good stuff, basically the same standard for a standard paper. And you have to, another guideline that you have to follow is that you have to use evidence from your textbook and from the lectures to support your ideas. So for example, if you're saying, no, they didn't go through all the relationship stages, which ones didn't go, they didn't go through, use evidence from the book. You don't necessarily have to quote, but you can paraphrase and add the page which you where you got it from your textbook, right? So you need to had evidence from textbook, lectures, ideas. For this one, you do not need to have a works cited pages, because I know that whatever page number you put in is from your textbook, unless you use any additional sources. They're not required, but if you think that it could make your paper stronger, it sure will make it stronger. So if you want to include outside sources, you can, but it's not required. If you are using outside sources, though, you have to cite. You have to do the works cited page. And lastly, you have to make sure that when you submit your paper online to turn it in on Canvas, you have to make sure that your paper is either in PDF format or your paper is in doc format. Linking it from Google Docs, it's not going to do anything, right? You actually have to download it onto your computer, revert it to, export it to a PDF or a Word document. And that's how, we'll see, if your document is, submitted accordingly. I had people that kind of copy and paste from Google Docs, and then it gives me a weird link. That doesn't do it. You have to download it and make sure it's exported to either a doc or a PDF. Yes, Patricia.
Do you want the page number on the essay? Usually, do you want it to be counted, or does it matter?
So if you are using stuff from the textbook, if you are using sources from the textbook, you are going to be putting just the page number, right? Not the author, just the page number.
No. I'm sorry, Professor Mejibar. I'm trying to say, on the essay, do you want us to number the pages? So when you get, no? Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Awesome. So basically, that's what your paper will be about. This is kind of our culmination of our lesson, basically taking everything that we have learned this semester and pour it into this paper. So if you have any further questions, just make sure to ask me as we get close to it. And next week, I'll remind you when we're getting closer to the stages of the relationship model, and when we're getting closer to talking about relationships, rules of romantic relationships, I will remind you that this is something that you need to take good notes on for your paper. So that's basically what your paper is going to be looking like. And I hope that you have fun with it, because I think it's really cool to kind of take what we know and apply it to other theories or relationships, because we are able to look at it with a new perspective. So it definitely should be a fun paper to write. Anyhow, so let's get started with today's lesson. I also want to remind you all to make sure that you are submitting all your work on time and all that good stuff. Reason being is because we are getting close to the semester. I think we're on week 10 already. We literally have 6 weeks left worth of class, which is unbelievable to me. So we're on week 10 and we have 6 weeks worth of class left. And I just want you to be submitting your stuff on time, make sure that you're staying on top of everything, make sure that you look at your grades, see where you're at with your grades, check all of that out. Oh, Karen, the semester ends on your birthday. Oh my God, we're gonna give you like a nice birthday shout out that day. But yes, so just like make sure that you are checking on your grades and you're looking at where you're at and all of that. Let's move along. So for this week, we are actually going to be talking about conversation. And believe it or not, we often overlook conversations. We often think that conversations are not that important, but there is such thing as awkward conversations or conversations that don't go well. So let's look at why there is such a thing as awkward conversations or conversations that are not structured and don't go well. So today we are going to be talking about, this week we're going to be analyzing conversations. So by the end of this week, you should be able to meet the following objectives. First, list the principles of conversation, which is what we're going to be talking about. There are 3 principles that are important to a good conversation. So we'll talk about that. Next, let's talk about the pros and cons of self-disclosure. And basically, self-disclosure refers to revealing your inner self to other people. And we'll talk about what are the good things and the bad things when it comes to self-disclosure. And we're also going to be talking about small talk. And like I said at the very beginning of the semester, I believe, small talk is usually not a thing in other cultures. It is a thing that's usually part of Western cultures. And like other cultures do not see the need for small talk. They even find it like it's a waste of time. But we in Western culture think it's useful. So we're going to talk about it and we're going to discuss what it is, how can we make a good small talk, and how can we make sure it doesn't turn awkward. So let's get started. The first thing is, what is a conversation? A conversation is a very simple definition. When we talk about a conversation, we're talking about an informal social interaction, meaning that it's like an informal social encounter, meaning that it is not planned, it's not rehearsed, it just happens, right? And, a conversation can happen both online and in person. So a lot of people were thinking, like, can a conversation happen online? And yes, it can. It will be a different type of conversation, but it can happen online and it can happen in person. So can somebody explain to me, how do conversations happen in a social media platform, and how is it different from a face-to-face conversation?
I think in a social media platform, either one of them slides into their DMs or whoever. And I feel like for me, like having a message on a social media platform is less trusting because compared to in person, you can see who it is and who you're talking to.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. And I absolutely agree. Like sometimes I go on like through my DMs on Instagram and I see like some random people messaging me like, this is so awkward, but I had like some like sugar daddy message me telling me that they were going to pay me like $5,000 a week. They're like, you're so beautiful. Can I pay you $5,000 a week? And I'm just like, how is that even like a conversation starter? Like, would anybody actually respond and say like, yes, I will be your sugar baby for 5,000 a week? I don't know if anyone would, but I know I wouldn't. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Like my husband's like, maybe you should get that sugar daddy so that you can like support all of us. And I'm just like, no, that's too much effort on my part. Patricia, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, how rude. I mean, it's one thing if you're going to sign and you request a sugar daddy, but for them to be fishing and just assume that you're interested, in the subject, it's just so rude.
It is. And it's so funny because a lot of my colleagues have gotten like the same messages from different guys. And we were talking about it and we're saying that's so strange. Like, and as communication like scholars and teachers, we look at it and we're thinking like, who would actually want to engage with you in a conversation if that's your starter? do you want to be my sugar baby? Like, why would I want to talk to you? It already seems kind of creepy to begin with. So why do I want to speak to you, right? So like Karen was saying, it can happen through DMs and it's less trustworthy to her because she doesn't know who the person is. Again, with my experience with this sugar daddy, why would I even reply to them? Like, as soon as I see that DM, I delete it and I block that person because it's not trustworthy. I'm not seeing who they are. I don't know who they are, so I don't trust them. What's another, how do conversations also happen in social media platforms? And what is the difference from, like real face-to-face conversation?
I was gonna say, I guess like, just because I guess like Karen, she did brought up like context. I guess like what I'm thinking is in the context of like sliding in the DMs or something. I feel like in that context, it's also a little bit more comfortable than like if you were to like walk up to a girl and like actually try that, because it's like I know like for some reason a lot of guys, they always use like cheesy pickup lines and whatnot, but it's like if you actually went up to a girl and you tried that, that's never gonna work, bro. Unless you might be like Ashton Kutcher or something, you might be able to pull that off.
I know. Oh, thank you for bringing that perspective, Kevin. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that, social media and social media platforms allow kind of that, like, they give you that, I think that the textbook talked about it and it's called like the disinhibition effect or something like that. It allows you to kind of like say things without like thinking about the consequences because the person is not present. And like you were saying, it is much easier to kind of like pull off those things online through the DMs than it is like face to face. Like somebody would find it fishy and strange if you were just to come up to them and say those things, those pickup lines like you could like get away with in a social media encounter. It's funny because a lot of scholars say that a conversation is different when it comes to like either like texting or in a social media platform because it doesn't happen synchronously, meaning that it doesn't happen at one time. Like it kind of like carries on over and over again. And I don't know if any of this has happened to you where you have a friend who hasn't seen one of your Instagram posts and it's been weeks or months since you posted it and then you just like randomly comment on it. And then you start having a conversation and then you pick it right up like a few weeks later. That has happened to me before. And I think like, is this really still a conversation because we're still kind of like going at it like after a while, or is it like different now? So that's one of the things that a lot of scholars look at and think about, just to give you food for thought. Now let's talk about the principles of conversation. So when we talk about the principles of conversation, there are several rules that conversations adhere to. And the first one is called the principle of process. And this basically says that a conversation has steps, right? In order for you to have an effective conversation, you have to have several steps that you have to follow. So these are all the steps. So the first one is an opening. This opening kind of like creates a connection between you and the other person. It could either be like a nonverbal, like wave or saying hi or making eye contact. Any of that can be kind of like an opening, right? So that's step number one. So you have to have some type of like interaction to kind of like initiate that conversation. So like the way that I think about it on social media, it would be like if you kind of like follow the person online, or if you like the post and then you post, you're kind of like using that like as an opening, right, as a connection, and then the post would take the next step, which is the feed forward. And the feed forward refers to kind of letting the audience know what the conversation is about. So let's say that I want to talk to my husband and I say, hi honey, I wanted to talk to you about Halloween, right? I'm letting him know exactly what it is that I want to discuss for that conversation. I said, hello, honey, that's my connection. Feed forward is, hey, I want to talk about Halloween. He doesn't know exactly what I want to talk about in regards to Halloween, but he knows it's a conversation about Halloween. Then the third step is called business. And then the business step is when you actually get to the meat of the conversation, is when you discuss what the conversation is about. and I start telling him, hey, honey, like, what are we going to do for Halloween? Where are we going to take our daughter? Are we going to take her trick-or-treating? And where are we going to take her trick-or-treating, right? That's where the whole business of the conversation happens. As I am giving him the information, the following step is feedback. He's letting me know what he got from the conversation and what he understood from it, right? He says, oh, okay, I can see how, like, you are concerned about this, like, there's a lot of stuff that we could possibly do, so how about if we do this? That's the feedback. And then I hang up the phone and I'm like, oh, okay, honey, I know that you're working, I know that you're busy, so we're going to go trick-or-treating. Okay, have a good day, bye-bye. Right? That's how the conversation goes. Again, going over again, opening is the connection, the initial connection you make. Feed forward is letting the person know what the conversation is about. The business is when you actually get to the meat and the details of the conversation. Feedback is how the other person responds to you, letting you know that they understood the content of the conversation. And closing is when you kind of like end that conversation and you either move on to another one or you go your separate ways. So we might not think of conversations like that, but conversations do have steps, right? They have these steps and they go by so quickly sometimes. Sometimes it's like a 1 minute conversation, but we go through all of these steps in that 1 minute. Questions? Nope.
Professor, so when you say like with feed forward, like your example was like, hey, I want to talk to you about Halloween. Can it also be in a form of a question?
Yeah. So it could be something like, oh, hi, whatever your name is. How did you feel about, like, this is the conversation that I just had with my husband. It's so funny. So I called him and I was like, hey, hon, I was like, did you drop off our daughter? He's like, yeah. And then I said, how do you feel about like the whole like the bridal shower and the bachelor party? And then that's our conversation. That's our feed forward. That's what I want to talk about. That's our conversation starter. Awesome. So those are the principles of conversation. Principle number 1, your conversations have steps. It follows a process. Cool. Now let's move on to the next principle. The next principle of conversation is the maximum quantity. Now principle says that when you're having a conversation, you cannot provide too little nor too much information. So I don't know about you, but I have some friends that we start having a conversation and then they start going into a lot more details than what the conversation requires. So let's say that we're talking about with my friend the bride, because that's who I spend most time with right now. So we were talking about, she went to get her makeup done at the makeup counter just for like a bridal trial. So we were talking about, like whether she liked the makeup or not, what was she looking for, what kind of lipstick. And then she kind of like went into this whole like other story about how like, she wore like red lipstick one time when she was in like middle school and she thought that she looked like a clown, and then she started going off into another direction. That's an example of like violating kind of that maximum quantity, giving me too much information. I just wanted to know, hey, do you want a red lip or do you want a pink lip, right? It could be oversharing too, Cabin. That's a good point that you're bringing up. There are some people that kind of like overshare information. So I think that, and we kind of get annoyed about those people who tell us too much or who don't tell us enough. So for example, again, with the same bride friend, one person dropped out from being the groomsman, and I said, oh, did they tell you the reason why? And she said, no, they said they just couldn't do it. Now, again, that actually also violates that maximum quantity, because usually when somebody says, no, I can't do it, usually there's a reason behind it. And they usually give you, whether it be a vague or, some type of like 2-sentence reason as to why they don't want to do it. They usually do. So she felt kind of upset about it because I can see how that violated that maximum quantity, right? It didn't give you enough detail. The next one is the maximum quality. And this is when you take the information that the person gives you at a face value. So every time that you engage in a conversation, you are going into the conversation with the idea that whatever that person tells you is the truth. Okay. Now, with that being said, there are some people that constantly violate that maximum of quality and constantly lie or over exaggerate. So every time that you enter the conversation with that person, you already have that prejudice that whatever comes out of their mouth might be false. And I'm telling you, I've had a lot of people who are like, oh, you know, like, I had a coworker who was like, oh, I got approached at Coachella and they wanted me to be a model for a campaign. And I'm just like, what are the chances that you, some random person who's not even hanging out with any celebrity, they're gonna approach you and be like, hey, do you want to be like the face for my campaign? Like, how random is that? Patricia?
Yeah, I think I have that problem. It's a big problem in my life because when people talk to me, I don't understand why they need to lie or why would they lie. I just that doesn't click on my head. And I think to take the word is for value because in my culture, in my belief, your word is who you are. It has a meaning and it has a value. So when people come and then later on I found out that they were deceiving, they were misleading me, lying about facts, it's really upsetting. But I don't know how to get rid of that. I've been trying, fighting myself because I feel like why will people lie for no reason? What's the point? I don't get that, but I do have that problem.
I completely agree with you, Patricia. Like, I also have people who like constantly, like, I had a friend who literally was like, oh, like, you know, people like approach me and they think I'm like Hillary Duff. And I'm just like, no, they don't think you're Hillary Duff. Like, you don't look like Hillary Duff. Like, and she constantly would lie with things like that. She'll be like, oh, like there was like this guy who approached me and told me that I was like really cute. And I'm just like, what are the chances somebody's gonna do that to you? Karen?
Well, I was gonna opinionate something to what Patricia said. The only reason why people lie is because they're afraid of the truth, and they know that the truth will set them free, but they don't want to share it, and they just want a pass on things.
I think people sometimes don't want that truth. The truth will set you free, but it will hurt as well. So I
Well,
think that is hilarious. But I do agree with you. Like, I'm telling you, like, that friend, she would be like, oh, like people think I'm Hillary Duff. And I'm like, you do not even look like Hillary Duff. Like, you don't.
like, no, shut up.
I would just like, I would just like, oh God, I would get so triggered. And this is the friend who's like the other bridesmaid who we don't talk to anymore, the one that we always have fights with. She used to do that to us in high school. She would be like, oh my God, somebody approached me and like asked me if I was Hillary Duff. And I was the only friend who would be like, no, you don't look like her. That's so random. As you can see, that's why we're no longer friends. Anyways, going to the next maxim of like, you know, the principle of conversation, it's called the maxim of relation. This talks about how you only want to bring up to the conversation what is relevant to that particular conversation. So let's say that, and that I think that kind of goes into hand in hand with the maxim of quantity as well, because you want to make sure that you only bring into the conversation what's relevant. If you are talking about, you know, what to do for Halloween, you don't want to start like bringing in like, oh, I also want to like plan like Thanksgiving. That has nothing to do with what the conversation was about at that point. So make sure that you only bring stuff that is relevant to it. And again, bringing in relevant details of the conversation sometimes causes people to, you know, be less trustworthy, because if you're bringing different things that do not apply to that particular conversation, it kind of gives us that fishy idea that you're lying or you feel like you have to over exaggerate. The last one is the maximum of manner. Make sure that your thoughts are organized in a way that they make sense to the person who's listening. So I know that I have friends of mine who are like super scattered brain when they're having conversations. They're talking about a million things at the same time. And at the end of the conversation, I end up thinking, what was that, right? Like, what was that about? So make sure that when you're having a conversation, make sure that you make it easy for the listener to know what you want them to take away. You want to make sure that the conversation stays, you know, on track, that they're able to remember what you said to them, and that they're like, you're sticking to like a theme and some type of organization that makes sense. So again, we probably all have a friend who either violates one of these principles or all of them. All right, so we talked about the principle of process. This is the principle of conversation, which deals with these 4 maxims, so or the rules for the conversation. Next, we are actually going to talk about, so hopefully everybody got the notes. Next, we're going to talk about the principles of turn taking. Now, believe it or not, we signal to others when we want to relinquish our talking turn or when we want to keep our talking turn. So these are what are called the conversational turns, and there are cues that both the speaker gives and that the receiver gives. So when we talk about speaker cues, are the cues that are given out by the person who's talking. So it's either turn maintaining or turn yielding. So for example, if I want to keep on talking, I would either I would avoid making eye contact with the other person, right? Because I don't want them to know that I'm relinquishing my turn. So a way of keeping your turn as a speaker, avoiding eye contact, speeding up as you talk as well, so that to make sure that they don't have time to interrupt your conversation. Also speaking louder than everybody else to make sure that you're asserting your dominance and keeping your turn. So again, eye contact, increasing the rate at which you're speaking and the volume at which you're speaking is an example of how you letting know the listener that you want to keep your speaking turn. Now, if you want to give away your speaking turn and you want the other person to take over, there are other things that you can do. Making direct eye contact. By making direct eye contact, you let the other person know that you're giving up your turn. Also, asking the person a question as an example of a turn yielding. Like you're saying like, oh, what do you think? That's an opening for them to say, hey, I'm done talking, you go ahead and talk. So as a speaker, when you are wanting to give up that speaking turn, you either make eye contact, you ask the person a question, or you simply kind of like start slowing down as well, so that the person has an opening to enter that conversation. Now, if you're a listener, and again, if you're a listener and if you want to continue listening and not claim a speaking turn, you will just kind of like, again, avoid eye contact as well. And start like probably engaging in more questions so that you can get the person to keep on going. If you want to take your turn as a listener, you would start making sounds like, yeah, like you're kind of bored and like you're done with, like you're over what they're saying, so that signals that you are ready to take on your turn of conversation. And also eye contact is a big thing. When you make direct eye contact, you're letting the person know, yeah, I hear it, my turn to talk now. Also, another thing that happens with turn taking is those back channeling cues. You want to make sure that you are letting the person know that you are listening. And again, when you are listening and you want the person to keep on going, you've asked them deeper questions, more elaborate questions so that they continue their conversation or explaining. And if you and again, like that's a back channeling cue. Nodding is a back channeling cue. Making eye contact is also a back channeling cue. So again, most eye contact and all of that, eye contact is a big thing on back channeling cues and asking questions and just like staying focused. Also, another thing of the principle of turn taking is interruptions. So sometimes when the speaker doesn't want to give up their speaking turn, they will continue to go on. And the only way to get into that conversation would be to interrupt, right? And again, interrupting is viewed as like not polite, as something rude in our culture. But sometimes when the other person has been talking way too much and they don't give you a chance to go in and have that conversation or anything like that, you feel the need to kind of like go in and interrupt or just jump into the conversation. So depending on the context, again, the whole interruption could be something that was called for in that conversation because of the speaker's unwillingness to release their turn, or because you're just trying to exert power or you're being rude. So hopefully that makes sense to a lot of us. So as you can see, a lot happens in conversation, like the turn taking, the speaker cues, the listener cues, the back channeling cues, interruptions, all of this constantly is happening, but we hardly ever like sit down and think about how all of these things make sense. I don't know about you, but when I'm having a conversation and I want to get my speaking turn, it automatically happens. I don't think about, hey, I'm going to make eye contact so I get my speaking turn. I automatically do it because it's so ingrained in us. Now I have a video because in my own, obviously, it wouldn't be my class if I didn't have a video. Ah. No, give me back. Give me back to the video.
I'm pregnant.
Are you all able to see it?
Yes, we can see.
Awesome.
6 or 7 weeks.
You forgot your shot?
I'm sorry. I know it's not good timing.
I have plans for us. I wanted to give you the world, not diapers and vomit and shit. You really think that I'm ready to be a father?
No, I don't. And I'm not ready to be a mother either, but we'll just figure it out.
I'm not ready to figure it out.
Hoping for a miracle. I'm not equipped for this, but I can't move until standing at the crossroads. There's no right answer, no one's brain to pick. Despite there's no escaping. I'm a too caught in headlights. I am hoping for sight. Not in dreams, not in dark. Please see me through battlefields. Christian, it's me. Where are you? Will you please come home? For dear.
Oh. Hey. You look mighty fine, Mrs. Grant.
Wow, you look mighty drunk. Where have you been? All right, let's go to bed.
Now you're talking.
Okay, big guy. Come on, lean on me.
Mm-hmm. You're so beautiful.
Oh, yeah? Both of me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, time for sleep.
This is where it starts.
Where what starts?
Babies mean no sex.
That can't be true. There'd be no siblings.
You're funny.
Oh, no. Come on. Come on.
Oh, hello. We have an intruder. You're gonna take her from me, aren't you? You'll see. You'll choose him over me.
Nobody's choosing anybody. He might be a she.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, let's talk about that. What was wrong with that conversation?
One was inebriated while the other one was sober.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I think she was like trying to like make sense to him, and he was like so like he was dead. And also like even before that, right, when they were having that conversation, she was trying to explain to him, like this is what, like, having a baby is okay, it's not that big of a deal, we're not ready. But like Dania is saying here on the chat, he wasn't willing to listen to the conversation at all. He didn't want to listen to her. He kept interrupting. He didn't make the eye contact. He didn't show he was engaging. Karen?
Christian was letting his anger cloud his judgment on everything. Like, it pretty much shows that they're ready. Like, the dude is like well put off with money and everything like that. He just, wasn't allowing to listen. He wasn't really like communicating correctly. He was just mad.
Thank you, Karen. Absolutely. Patricia, you had your hand up?
Yes, I think the only good thing that came out of him being drunk is that if we pay attention, he tells him why he doesn't want to have a child. He's afraid of losing her.
Yeah,
And it's the
absolutely.
only good thing that came out of that being drunk, because he did express his feelings. And I think before he hadn't discussed that with apparently his wife. I saw a ring. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is his wife. And absolutely, I love that you brought that up. He definitely had like some type of like attachment issues, and he never told her why he didn't want to have kids, really fast. And again, it was because he felt like he was losing her. So that's why he didn't want to have kids. Awesome. Anyways, folks, that is all for today. You are done. On Thursday, we will be talking about self-disclosure, and we'll be talking about small talk. So I will see you all on Thursday. Try to start finding like a couple that you like to write your paper about. I know that it's not due for a couple of weeks, but the sooner you get started, the faster you can submit it, and you'll be right on top of your work. And with that being said, I will see you all on Thursday.
Wait, Professor.
Yes.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Are you teaching any other classes at PCC next semester?
Yes, I'm teaching argumentation.
Yeah, it's speech 6. I saw it. That's what I wanted to ask you about too, because I wanted to take the class.
Oh, that's my favorite class to teach. You'll love
Yeah.
it.
I need that for my articulation.
Thank you.
It means the critical thinking that the school requests for graduation.
Transfers. Yeah.
Oh,
That's right. Yes, so that's why I'm taking it too. Thank you,
Perfect.
Professor. That's what I wanted to double check, that you're teaching the class for sure.
Yes, I am teaching 2 sections of it. So.
okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Karen.